G'day, we're going to look at this Dell Latitude 5430 rugged. This is a 14-inch tough laptop. Now this laptop is designed for outdoors use as well as for those extreme cases. Now this laptop has an IP rating of 53, which means this thing can take a lot of water punishment as well. Now we're going to look at the features of this computer, we'll look at the temperatures and fan noise of the computer, and have a quick look at the performance of this computer as well. And as always, I will be putting timestamps along this video so you can skip to a different section that you may be interested in, or just to save you time. Now let's have a look at the build construction. Now this whole entire thing is what I would say a combine of extreme tough plastic and also rubber. Now, they're always usually on the sides just to give a bit of cushioning for when it's been dropped. And I'm not going to do the test for that. I believe this very well. This is able to handle a lot of drops in any sort of direction and any sort of impact this thing could take. Now, normally what I do in my review videos is trying to actually twist or even bend or flex this computer. Now, this computer, I can definitely tell I'm not going to be able to flex or twist it. It's just that rigid. But if you can try and see, look at that. This thing is just that hard. This thing is literally built like a brick and handles pretty much, has a little bit of weight to it, but you can pretty much hurt someone, club someone if you need to, and use it as a weapon as well too. This is that tough as well too. It's just crazy tough. And of course, now the keyboard, that's not much flex in the keyboard here. This thing is just built sturdy and rigid. So this thing here is quite nice. Now, again, what I said was basically we've got plastic on the top, plastic on the bottom. They're all very hard plastic and very, very reinforced plastic on the sides to the point where I think it might even be metal on the side as well too. Now, if you can see all the ports, I've got rubber coverings to help with the IP53 along each one, so that's very nice to see. And of course, we've got a nice big handle that you can hold on to. This is something that has been on the Dell Rugged for a while, and we do have quite a bit of cushioning around the side of the display, especially just to give it a little bit. I have pressed a lot of push into this Gorilla Glass. I have pushed quite a lot. It takes a lot of pressure, and I haven't been able to actually make any damage to it at all yet. It still holds very responsive. Now, having a look at the hinge. Now, this is very interesting because when we close this 5430 rugged, it actually has a latch which actually catches and holds onto the display with the body of the computer, so you can actually quite easily travel and you don't have to worry about this opening up. So that's not an issue itself. Now, what's very funny is, and interesting is, and I find very cool, is that once you press the button to unleash the hatch, it actually does allow it to lift up a little bit, and that's really more used for, because this is designed also for glove work. So you can easily just use your, and I'm going to do the one finger test, and you'll see this is a bit of a surprise, is that it's a very smooth pressure that you can use. You would have thought, being a rugged computer, this hinge would actually grip and hold very well. But no, this is actually a very nice smooth. As you can see, it still holds extremely well because I'm just moved the whole entire thing up. So I do need the pressure to close it. But it is a smooth pressure, and just to open it is a very smooth pressure, and yet it doesn't even lift or catch, and you're thinking it might be jagged. So Dell has done a fantastic job on this hinge. The hinge is what I'll say plastic. Again, it's reinforced plastic as well too. So definitely great job on the hinge work. And of course, I'm not going to really need to do the wiggle test, but even if I did the wiggle test, you'll see this hinge is actually holding on, even though it was a very smooth opening all the way through. The webcam is located above the display and it has a privacy shutter, which you can then just slide the lever to the right, and you'll see a physical shutter that covers the lens. This is a recording from the 720p webcam from the 5430 rugged. This is the video and audio unedited, so you can hear and see what the quality of webcam is like. Now, I normally in the section here where I talk about the webcam, I always ask for a 1080p option, or if there is a 1080p option, would be fantastic. But in this situation with the 5430 rugged, I'm actually happy there's only a 720p webcam, and I'm actually fine with it being only a 720p webcam. You'll ask, why is that? And the reason for it is, what is this laptop is designed for, and it's more than likely where is this laptop going to be used, and that is this computer is more than likely to be used outdoors or out in very remote areas, in the sticks is what I call it. And so more than likely this computer will be running off cellular, and either on 5G if you're very lucky, 5G, but more than likely in 4G or 3G or even CDMA networks. And so you won't be want to actually transfer too much data over those networks, because it could either cost you a lot of money in terms of the cellular data, or you might not have very good signals, so you actually want very low amount of data to be transferred over, and that's what the 720p webcam is good for. Whereas a 1080p webcam, you're going to have a lot of data to be transferring over, and really for this computer here, you're not really doing content creation. You're more than likely just want to just do your video conferencing for just the content itself, and that's really right, more than over the quality. So having a 720p webcam is absolutely fine in this computer here. Now, as always, I've got two types of the current turned on. I've got my one studio light turned on as well, and I've got the down lights turned on. Now I'm going to turn off my studio light, and you'll see my downlights take over, and again you'll see the webcam adjust. Now the two downlights in front of me is a bit far away, there's not much light currently hitting on my face, so this is what I consider a dark environment. And if you're in an office environment or outdoors, you get much more light than what I'm currently at the moment. I'm going to turn my one studio light back on, and you'll hopefully get better quality light, gives you better quality picture. Now I also would talk about the noise cancellation. Now I'm going to actually give you a snippet of the noise cancellation, because when I did the recording for it, it kept cutting in and out because I've got quite a lot of noise, and it's probably trying to cut that out. So please bear with that video. Now I've also got the noisy office environment setting for the microphone, which is in Dell Optimizer, and that has a very aggressive noise cancelling reduction currently turned on. Now I'm going to switch to what we call quiet room in the Dell Optimizer, which puts a mild noise cancellation on. Now I do have my daughter probably listening to, probably reading a little bit with it as well. So I'm just going to turn on now quiet room. Now in quiet room situation for the Dell Optimizer, so hopefully you hear the bit of a difference. Now I've also got some testing computers on, so there's actually quite a bit of fans going on, which is going around about noise. Now I'm also going to put into, so you'll hear this. So now we are in recording studio. You probably hear a little bit of sound difference there. This again puts a very mild noise reduction on, and also it enhances the volume of the audio as well as the voices as well. Now I'm just going to switch to noisy office. Now in noisy office mode, hopefully you hear the difference. There are two speakers located in front of the laptop. These two speakers are hidden behind the handle. And when I tested out the maximum volume of the speakers, it managed to measure it in a peak of 95.1 decibels. These speakers, what I would consider loud speakers, which is good because these speakers are, and this laptop is designed for outdoors use. So if you're doing a presentation or listening to multimedia outdoors, you should be able to hear from this laptop, or even doing a video conference outdoors as well. As for the sound quality of the speakers, we do have some bass coming out of the speakers, but that's not that low end and also that oomphy bass that you would like to hear from bass, but at least it attempts at some bass. Now, as for the mids and highs, they're actually quite strong and they're actually quite balanced, and we just have got quite nice acoustics. Although they are front-facing speakers, but still, you should still be able to hear 360 degrees. What is surprising from the speakers is the clarity of the speakers. Normally, with speakers from IP53 and above, they usually are quite muddled in terms of clarity to try and take care of all that waterproofing, but the clarity on the Latitude 5430 rugged speakers is actually quite clear, which is a bit of a surprise, which means they're actually quite nice. Audio sample of the 54 rugged speakers at 100% volume.
Wanna stay alive if you don't wanna be Don't stand, don't say, don't look back, she anticipates, no chance.
It also has a garage stylus. Now this stylus is not active at all. It's just a piece of plastic is the best way to call it. It does have a lanyard, which is good so you don't actually lose it in. And again, being garage, which means you also have this ready to go whenever you need it as well too. Now what I mean by being basic, it is pretty much the same as pretty much using your finger, and that's really just a contact point rather than use if you're working with gloves. This is just another way of working with the display itself. Again, it does not have any pressure points or any tilt or any function of that. It's just as if you're using your finger, the exact same as that. The 5430 Rugged does come with an application called the Rugged Control Center. Now this control center allows you to access and configure special features of the Rugged edition. Now we're going to quickly explore this control center. Now under the dashboard, under the hardware features, we find a unique module that is uniquely to the Rugged edition, and that is the GPS module. Now this is not available in the normal Latitude 5430. And we're going to go down to program. What the program is getting some quick menus up, and again this Rugged edition is designed for glove work. As we've got a garden glove here, and I've got some very dry mud on my gloves as well, and it still is able to take on the inputs. Now we're just going to quickly just show you what we mean by this is we'll go down to left edge, and again you can add some features onto the left edge menu, and you can pretty much have a bunch of functions and applications can be launched or access some functions. Now I'm going to set this to F11, so I'm going to press F11 so you can actually see what this comes up as, and as you see I can bring that up. Now I'm going to just cancel this, and we'll go down to feature list. This just allows you to configure some different parts of the features that you can access through the program there. And we're going to go down to settings. I'm going to quickly go down to a very unique setting called stealth mode. Now what stealth mode allows it to do is you can configure this, turn things on and off as you need to have this in stealth mode. So you can actually turn off the fans. You can also turn off the display as well, so it turns off the backlight, but it still is on. And then you can actually do some other fun things about this thing as well too. So this is for stealth mode, but more for use for military work than anything else. The display is a full HD display with a glossy glass finish, and it has a rating of 1100 nits of brightness or luminance. Now this is probably one of the most brightest screen I've had on this channel. Even with the sun shining directly on the glossy glass display, it did have reflections, but due to the extreme brightness of this display, it was able to overcome the reflections, and I was still able to easily work on documents and consume multimedia. And of course, in the shade, this display has no problems at all. More than likely, you probably have to lower it because it is that bright. And as for the backlight, surprisingly, I did not find much light leak around the edges at all. Measuring the color gamut coverage of the full HD display, which has a rating and also measured in at 1100 nits of brightness or luminance, it resulted with 98.9% sRGB coverage, 72.2% Adobe RGB coverage, and 75.8% DCI P3 coverage. The 5430 does come with two batteries. They have a rating of 53.5 watt-hour batteries, and they are situated at the back, and they're very easy to access. And I'm just going to unlatch one of them so you can see this. And as you can see from the back end, there is also a nice little button to show the indication of how much charge is left on each batteries. And there are 5 LED lights, 20% per one. So this one's got 2, so this one's got 40% left. And this one's got 100%, as you can see. Now, these are hot swappable, so at the moment I've got one battery in, and you still see that the computer is still able to work out, so you can actually swap out each battery once you have another battery in there, of course. And that's really nice when you're on the go and just need the extra charge. I tested the battery life on this 5430 rugged, and I tested my own Windows 11 in my 5 different modes. So in best performance, it managed to get 2 hours and 10 minutes. In balance mode, it managed to get 2 hours and 30 minutes. In best power efficiency mode, it managed to get 6 hours and 15 minutes. In battery saving mode, it managed to get 10 hours and 15 minutes. And in media mode, it managed to get 9 hours and 45 minutes. It does try to drain one battery first before it starts draining the second battery, which is good because then you can actually hot swap that battery for a spare battery. And as a disclaimer, my battery life tests, I always put a very consistent workload across all the system resources, and most applications won't hit all the system resources as hard as I would in my battery life test. So you should get better numbers than what I would. I'm just giving the worst case scenario. The weight of the Latitude 5430 rugged is 2.46 kilos, plus the 65 watt power adapter becomes a combined weight of 2.79 kilos that you might be carrying around with you. As for the temperatures and fan noise, when I took my measurement, my ambient temperature was 20 degrees Celsius and my ambient room noise was 36 decibels. And as always, your average hand is anywhere between 33 to 34 degrees Celsius, just to give you reference points to see how hot or how cool this laptop could be. So I took my base measurement when the computer was on idle, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 30 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it stayed at 36 decibels, so practically quiet. And the average internal core temperature was 38 degrees Celsius. Then I put 20% load on the computer, so that's pretty much average use. So that's tasks like office productivity work, streaming video, surfing the web, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in a maximum of 35 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it still stayed at 36 decibels, and the average internal core temperature went up to 53 degrees Celsius. Then I put 50% load on the laptop, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 35 degrees Celsius still. And as for the fan noise, went all the way up to 37 decibels. So still what I would consider practically quiet. There is a little fan noise. The average internal core temperature was 51 degrees Celsius. Then I put 100% load on the computer, and the hottest area on the computer measured in at 37 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, hit a maximum of 40 decibels. And as for average internal core temperature was 67 degrees Celsius. I also measured the bottom back cover of the computer, and the hottest area on the bottom back cover was 38 degrees Celsius. And of course, it stayed at maximum of 40 decibels. Looking at the results, and considering this is an i5, it is quite a relatively cool and also very quiet laptop. Let's have a look at the stability performance of the processor in the Latitude 5430 rugged. This one's configured with an i5 1145G7, and looking on the Intel website, has a maximum turbo boost of 4.4 gigahertz and has a base clock speed of 2.6 gigahertz at 28 watt TDP, and it can go all the way down to 1.1 gigahertz at 12 watt TDP if it's feeling hot or it's trying to save power. Ideally, we want to see it at 2.6 gigahertz or above. I've had this computer running on 100% load, both the processor, RAM, and hard drive for over 9 hours. I have it connected to mains power, set the Windows power scheme to best performance, and also in the thermal management to ultra performance in the Dell Power Manager. And we can see that the speed of the processor is pretty much averaging anywhere between 3.8 to about 4 gigahertz. So I'll say about 3.9 gigahertz, which is above the 2.6 gigahertz, quite high up, which is doing extremely well at maintaining that. And we have an average internal core temperature of, I would say, around about 68 degrees Celsius. So it's actually doing pretty well for a long extended period of time. Now we have a look at the single core behavior of the processor in the 5430 rugged. I'm going to start a single core task in Citybench R23. I'll start the stopwatch as well. And we'll look at the speed of the processor and we're sitting at 3.9 gigahertz, and it is just moving to about 4 gigahertz here, which is quite good. And we're still at 4 gigahertz. Now I do have this computer connected to mains power, as well as set to best performance in Windows Power Scheme, and also ultra performance in the thermal management in the Dell Power Manager. And after 30 seconds, we are still rock stable at, I would say, 4 gigahertz. And after the 1 minute mark, we are still pretty stable at 4 gigahertz. Now we just hit the 2.5 minute mark, and we just saw it quickly dip down to about 3 gigahertz, and now we're just sitting at about 3.3 to 3.7 gigahertz at the 2:45 minute mark, and we've just gone back to about 4 gigahertz. It was only about 10 to 15 seconds where it just dipped down, and now it's come back up to about 4 gigahertz and staying stable there. And we've just done it again at the 3.5 minute mark. We had a quick dip to about 3.3 gigahertz, and then just quickly for only about 2 seconds, and then it's gone back to about 4 gigahertz. And we just hit the 4.5 minute mark, and we again just did another dip to about 3.3 gigahertz, and then it's just only for about 2 seconds, and it's gone back up to about 4 gigahertz. Now we're just about to finish off the single core tasks, and we can see from the behavior of the process of single core is in the first 4.5 minutes, every minute or so, it will just drop its stable clock speed of 4 gigahertz to about 3.3 gigahertz for, I would say, between 2 to 5 seconds. And then it will quickly ramp itself back up to about 4 gigahertz. And then the next minute or so, it will do 4 gigahertz, and then another quick drop to about 3.3 gigahertz for about 2 to 5 seconds, and then it'll produce itself back up to about 4 gigahertz. Now that happens in the first 4.5 minutes mark. So it does that cycle, and after that, it's pretty much smooth sailing at 4 gigahertz all the way through to the completion of this project, which took close to about 9.5 minutes. Now I've also performed this test over 3 times, and the behavior of the processor seems to be very similar. As for the keyboard, there is a little bit of difference to your typical usual Dell Latitude keyboard. Now, the keys on this has quite a lot of key travel. They've got quite a lot of tactile feel to them as well. They are what I call semi-quiet as well, and most importantly is the size of keys is what I would consider a little bit more smaller than normal for Latitude. Now again, this is made for glove work, so I can understand that, and the spacing in between each keys is quite large. Again, that's more designed for glove work. As for the backlight for the keys, you can get a non-backlit keyboard. There is also an option for an RGB backlit keyboard, and there's also an option for a rubberized sealed RGB backlit keyboard as well. Now, I have played with the RGB backlit keyboard. The only thing I've found is you need to go to BIOS to actually configure the RGB of the backlight for the keys. So this is something I like to see. They'll put an application where you can actually control the RGB backlit keys through Windows. Will be fantastic. As for the trackpad, it is quite small considering in 2022, as most trackpads are getting larger. The best way to describe this trackpad is looking at an old Latitude pre-2019. It's sort of the same sort of trackpad as those. And as for the texture of the trackpad, it is that hard plastic feel, same as the palm rest, and you can't depress the trackpad at all. But you do have 2 buttons below the trackpad for your left and right mouse click. The trackpad is plastic, and the reason for that is it is very responsive to glove work. Now I do have some dry mud on my gloves here, and it is very responsive. And again, it's nice to have those physical buttons so I can actually use that with gloves. As you can see, I'm working quite happily, and it's very responsive to my movement and touch from the gloves. And I'm just doing a very light one now, and that is doing still very well here. Here's the results of the benchmarks. This Dell Latitude 5430 rugged is configured with an i5 1145G7 with 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gig SSD. Here's the results of Passmark, Citybench R23, PC Mark, 3D Mark, Geekbench 5, Procon Office, Procon Video Edit, Procon Photo Edit, Fusion Photoshop, Fusion Lightroom, Fusion Premiere Pro, Fusion After Effects, Fusion DaVinci Resolve, Eugene Engine, Blender, Luxmark, and SpecView Pref. Overall, if you are in a market for looking for a laptop that can take to extreme cases or even doing a lot of outdoor work, now definitely would not go past the Dell Latitude 5430 rugged. This thing is built tough and also has a good amount of features to handle outdoor work or even what I'll call stealth work as well. And simply, I think Dell have done a fantastic job on this 5430 rugged. Now, I hope you find this video informative or enjoyed it. If you did, even to support my channel, smash that like button for me. And if you haven't done already, subscribe to my channel by hitting that subscribe button on the screen. I do try to upload a new video every week. And if you want to support me further, click on that join button for my membership. Try to do a little extra for the members as well. And as always, imperfections in life makes it beautiful and interesting. And I'll catch you in the next video.